Hi, I'm Amanda Kendall with True Resolve Tax Professionals, and I wanted to talk to you today about budgeting for your taxes when you're self-employed. Let's face it, when you work for someone else and they're taking the taxes out of your paycheck, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to worry about it, it's coming out, it's going to the government, and then at the end of the year you file your tax return to decide if you owe a little more, if you have money coming back, or if you broke even. When you're self-employed and you get that paycheck every month from your contractor, the company you're working for, whatever the case may be, you're sitting in a situation where you have this money but the taxes haven't come out, and you go to paying your household expenses, your auto expenses, your health insurance, whatever expenses you have, childcare, whatever it is that you're dealing with each month. And you go to paying those and taxes almost come as an afterthought. The taxes coming in as an afterthought, I see getting people in trouble with the government all the time. What I mean by that is they don't realize how much they were going to owe. And so now they have a tax bill that they can't deal with all at once. Or they don't realize that they're getting penalized even if they are paying it in full when they file their taxes. If you're not having your taxes paid in full by January 15th as a self-employed individual, you're getting hit with penalties. Penalties equal more money, which means that you're hitting your overall budget harder when it comes to the taxes than you need to. At minimum, the government is looking for you to make 4 quarterly tax payments a year. These are going to fall on January 15th, April 15th, June 15th, and again on September 15th. And yes, I know, they're not perfect quarters. I didn't make up these dates. They come from the IRS. So I know they're not perfect quarters, but those are the dates we have. So then we get into the issue of now you have this money sitting in your bank account for 2, 3, sometimes 4 months. And if an emergency comes up, that tends to be the first fund that's tapped into. And people just tell themselves, well, I'll catch up on the taxes later. And more often than not, later never comes. So one of my suggestions when it comes to being self-employed and budgeting for your taxes is do it on a monthly basis. Just like you're going to pay your rent or your mortgage on a monthly basis. Just like you're going to pay your car payment and your car insurance and your health insurance on a monthly basis. Just like you're paying electric, gas, water, whatever expenses you have. Just like you're paying those on a monthly basis, pay your taxes on a monthly basis. This does 2 things for you. 1, it gets you in the habit of budgeting those in every single month so it doesn't become an overlooked expense. Then when you have a surplus in your bank account, you can go back and be like, oh, wait a minute, didn't pay my taxes this month. I'm going to get that payment sent in. 2, it allows you to make sure that those funds are not being spent elsewhere, either when an emergency arises or just out of necessity. Unfortunately, the IRS takes a stance that taxes come first. Taxes are paid on the income you earned, and so they have to be paid before your other daily expenses get paid. And that's just a really firm stance that the IRS takes. So you don't want to get in a situation where you're having to argue with the IRS why you didn't pay it when you're talking about trying to have some of these penalties removed. So that's my first tip, is to do it monthly instead of quarterly. The next thing that I want to touch base on is how much do you pay? Do you know how much you need to pay? Do you have any idea how to even figure out how much you need to pay? So what I can tell you is if you work with a tax professional, they should be able to very easily and very quickly tell you what tax bracket you're in, based on either last year's tax return or based on current year income projections. And based on that, they should be able to tell you the percentage to withhold for your income tax and your self-employment tax. So let me actually back up a little bit here and explain self-employment tax. If you know you're paying it, but you're not sure what you're paying for. Self-employment tax is your Social Security and your Medicare tax that you pay part of and your employer pays part of when you work for someone. As a self-employed individual, you don't have anyone paying part of it, so you're responsible for all of it. So when I say self-employment tax, that's what I'm talking about, just to be clear on that. Typically, I've found that self-employed individuals are being told to withhold between 15 to 25%. In most cases, this will be sufficient. You might end up with a little bit of a surplus, you might end up with a little bit of a shortfall. But either way, this is going to be fairly sufficient for you if you're self-employed. However, If you're in a higher tax bracket, that's definitely going to be a shortfall for you. If you're in a lower tax bracket, that's definitely going to be a surplus for you. And a shortfall or a surplus, either way you look at it, is affecting your monthly budget one way or another. So there's a couple things that you can do throughout the year to really stay on top of what your quarterly, or in this case, as I'm advising you, monthly tax payments need to be. So one of those things as a small business is bookkeeping. Bookkeeping is essential to know what your income is. You know what you're bringing in, but if you don't have a handle on what your expenses are, then you have no idea what your actual taxable income is going to be off of that. So having a good bookkeeping system in place, and if you're big enough to have a bookkeeper, having a good bookkeeper that understands tax or works well with a tax professional so that they understand what they're doing, is essential to knowing the bottom line so you can determine what your estimated tax payments need to be. Another thing is projections with your tax professional. All too often, people go into their tax office once, maybe twice a year, usually year end and during tax time. Year end is a little too late to do any real planning when you're doing your tax projections. So it's my advice that you actually meet with your tax professional no less than 3 or 4 times a year. This can be quarterly so that you can figure out and make sure that you're on track for the quarter. You don't have to meet with them every month. You don't have to have them run a projection every month. But if they're running a quarterly projection, then they can tell you, okay, well, we're short X amount of dollars for last quarter. We need to make that up in this next month. Or we have a little bit of a surplus from last quarter, and if this quarter is going to be the same, then you can actually short or lessen those tax payments by X amount of dollars a month, and that can go towards the rest of your household budget. So regular meetings with your tax professional is going to be pretty essential in knowing that you're staying on top of these and you're staying on top of them with the correct dollar amount. Most importantly, and I've already said this in this video, but most importantly is don't let it be an afterthought. You want to stay ahead of the game with your taxes. You want to stay ahead of the game with the IRS when it comes to paying your taxes. And so coming in December to sit down with your tax professional and say, hey, here's my profit and loss. I need to make sure I've paid in enough taxes. What happens if they turn around and say, oh, well, you're actually short by $7,000? Do you have the $7,000 to pay in? Maybe you do. If so, great. But maybe that $7,000 was being budgeted towards something else, like a family vacation or a house repair, something like that. And so being able to stay on top of these more consistently allows you to make sure you don't get hit with that. On the other side of that is, what if they tell you, oh, well, you've overpaid by $7,000? Now you might be sitting there thinking, well, that $7,000 could have taken my family on a vacation this past summer. Or I could have finished the basement that I've been wanting to finish, but I haven't had the budget for. So staying on top of this is really going to help your budget in 2 ways. One, it's going to make sure that you're not overspending on your taxes and cutting yourself short somewhere else. It's also going to make sure you're not underspending on your taxes and that you're going to end up with a big surprise, a big high dollar surprise at the end of the year when you go to file your taxes. There's a saying that I love, and I don't think it fits anywhere in life better than when it comes to your taxes. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I hope you found this information helpful when it comes to budgeting for your estimated tax payments. So again, just a quick recap. Do them monthly, not quarterly, even though the IRS only requires quarterly. If you don't want to do them monthly, you don't want to send the check to the IRS every single month, then set up a savings account that is not attached to your main spending account so that you don't see that money and you're not tempted to spend it. But if you know you're not going to be able to not spend that if an emergency comes up, then send it in monthly. The second is bookkeeping is essential. Knowing your numbers is the only way you can know your tax. So it's really important to be on top of your numbers and stay up to date with that. And last is don't make it an afterthought. You don't skip months of your mortgage and not think about it, so don't skip months of taxes and not think about it. Make it something that is a regular thought every single month when you're planning your budget. Hope you found this information helpful. If you have any questions on this at all, or you feel like you want to sit down with somebody to see if projections would help you, feel free to give me a call. Again, I'm with True Resolve Tax Professionals. Phone number here at the office is 720-319-8954. Wish you the best of luck in budgeting for your taxes, and I will see you again.